All right, let's see if this works the way it's supposed to. Oh, cool. Awesome. My name is Michaela Hudson. I am the 4-H and Youth Development Extension Agent in Madison and Jefferson counties here in beautiful Whitehall, Montana. I am going to be talking about horse colors and markings, why they're important, some different variations that we'll see. The other thing I'd like to throw out there before we get too far into this is the way I'm going to explain this is the way that I learned it, the way I understand it, and hopefully the way I explain it will help you understand markings and colors better. If there's one thing I've learned from working with horses and horse people, it doesn't matter if you're working with the same horse over and over again. Every day is a new lesson. There's a million different ways to do things and explain things. And so this is just my way of explaining colors and markings in the best way possible. So I hope it's helpful. Let's get started. So why do we care about colors and markings? Start off with, we'll use an example here. We have two registered mares here, exact same color. They have a little bit of a different physical structure, but in terms of looking at their actual papers, they're totally identical. They're both Bay Roans. They're both 15-2. How do we tell them apart? This is where the markings on their legs and faces helps us identify these animals accurately, both on registration papers, but also on brand inspections. So the mare that we have on the left-hand side, who's standing with parallel to us, you can see in that photo she has a very small star, which is just a dot on her forehead. And the mare on the right side, you can't see it very well, but she has a sock. It goes all the way around her foot, but it looks like a half sock on her left hind foot. So when you're looking at her papers, it actually says 11-year-old bay mare, or Bay Roan mare, with a sock on her left hind foot. And the mare on the left, it says 11-year-old Bay Roan mare with a small star on her forehead. So, I mean, it doesn't say forehead. Star implies that it's on her forehead. But you get what I'm saying. Those markings, when you're looking at the papers, and the papers look identical except for what's written on them. So those markings are super important. So I said registration, overall general ID of the animal. Not everybody's going to know your animal. What if you want to sell one Bay Roan and keep the other? Also, you need to know their markings for travel permits. And the one that I forgot to put on here is brand inspections. Now, on my brand inspection, permanent brand inspection, it has a picture of the horse, both the left side, the right side, front and back of the animal. And the brand inspector actually draw on the markings right onto the piece of paper, because you can have 20 different stars and 20 different socks on the left hind foot, and they are all going to look different. Those are like our fingerprints are all unique. The markings on these horses are also unique. So having detailed drawings of the animal's markings helps make sure that we keep these animals accurately recorded. Now the horse in that first, I'll go back up here. His name's Jake. He's a registered AQHA blood bay. And so, for example, I have 3 blood bays. Now, they're all registered, and in his case, he has no white on him anywhere. He's a true blood bay. Black mane and tail, black legs, dark muzzle, and a reddish-brown dark body, okay? Now, down here, we'll talk colors, and I'll explain to you, show you some other photos of some bays. So there's 5 main colors, and some could argue that there's 4 because chestnut and sorrel are so close. They're so close in color. Now, some might ask, well, isn't white a base color? you could also argue that most of the time white is considered a recessive gene that comes out and creates bay roans and red roans and blue roans out of these other colors up here. And you'll even see it come in as a dominant color in specific breeds. We'll use the Lipizzaner, for example, or a paint. You'll have horses that are almost completely white with a little bit of brown. And so white is their main color. So, chestnut and sorrel. For the most part, chestnuts, horses, have a red tone to them, even though they might look brown. So this foal down here on the bottom who's laying down is your typical chestnut, that really pretty red gold color, nice and coppery. He's got the same color mane and tail as the rest of his body. His legs aren't darker. Overall, same color horse all across. Now, there's a range in colors. You have honey gold, you have orange red, you have a copper, you have a chocolate. You have one up here that's could be considered a chocolate, but the goal is to kind of show just how dark a chestnut or a sorrel could be. So, here's where sorrels and chestnuts kind of cross over. So, a chestnut, for the most part, has a flaxen mane and tail. So their mane and tail are actually lighter than the rest of their body. Whereas with the other sorrels, their mane and tails are pretty similar to the main color of their body. So we've got our this cute little filly here on the left side with that lighter gold mane and forelock. And we've also got this little pony up here who's got a lighter color tail and mane than the rest of your body. So that's what you would consider a chestnut. Now, like I said, I'm sure someone's like, I don't know, it could be argued the other way. That's fine. It's a fine line. That's why I put chestnut or sorrel. They can kind of be interchangeable. The most important thing to remember is these horses have the same color or lighter mane and tail to their body color, and their legs are the same color as their body. Typically. There's pretty much an exception to every rule when it comes to horses and colors and markings across the board. All right, black. Black's pretty simple. There is black and there's black. There's no real variation, at least not that I've seen. But like I said, there's variations to these rules. So here's a photo of some nice black Friesians. All right. Here's our bays. So the big characteristic with bays is they have a black mane and tail and darker legs than the rest of their body. So this is the most common color you'll see in horses. And there's a range, just like in the other color, in the chestnuts and sorrels. So you have a regular bay, and so we have this nice comparison diagram here. You've got a regular bay over here. You've got a dark bay, which is very close to the horse that's right up above here. You've got a lighter bay, and then you have a blood bay, which is where those red tones come in to the horse. Now this horse up here with the saddle on, his name's Newt. He's also a blood bay. So he's one of the three that I have. He has white on his face and on his legs. And so when I'm looking at their papers and I'm trying to figure out who's who, because a lot, at least in my case, my horse's registered names are not what I actually call them. They have different names. So when I'm looking at their registration papers, sometimes I have to remind myself by looking at the markings of what the animal is. So the reddish brown, almost purpley is where that blood bay. Now he's real soft. Newt up here in the corner, he's a real soft color at the moment because he still has his winter hair, but when he sheds out, he's got that classic purpley color. And bays always have dark points. If they don't have dark points, they're not a bay. All right, browns. So like with the beige, you can have a range of colors, but for the most part, there's not really any undertones of red or copper. It's just brown. From head to toe, legs are the same color, tails are the same color as their body. There's just an overall even tone. Now, again, there's variations, and this is just the way it was explained to me. And here's an example of a brown horse. All right, so we've got some more fun colors here that I figured we'd go over and just kind of take a look at the different ones and what they're called. So starting up in the left-hand side corner, we're going to work our way across here, is what we would call a line back dun. Now, duns and buckskins are very close in terms of genetics. There's a very small gene that actually makes them a dun, which is that line that goes right down their back and sometimes even down their tail. They also can have tiger stripes on the insides of their back legs, and they literally look like tiger stripes. I don't know how else to describe them. It's a very unique characteristic, very pretty. They can be a range of colors all the way from that real pretty cream that you see in buckskins to almost an orange. All right, moving on over to the right, we have what we would call a blue roan. So this is where that white is coming in to the horse and giving them this bluish color. And it can go both ways, so hopefully I don't repeat myself over again. You can have a base tone of white with black coming through, or you can have a base tone of black with white coming through. The important thing is they have dark points. So if it has like a white mane or blonde mane, it's most likely going to end up being more in terms of the red roan. It's very rare you're going to see a blue roan, a true blue roan, with a lighter mane and tail. They typically have a darker face, black mane and tail, and darker legs. Now continuing over to the right is a red roan. Now I'm going to kind of break my rule here of moving straight across. Kitty corner to that red roan is another horse that's very similar. So this is where, though, you see the difference in those base colors that we have. So the red roan up in the right-hand corner has a red mane and tail. It's got a base color of either a sorrel or a chestnut. Now, the bay roan, the one characteristic that they have to have is they have to have a black mane and tail with darker legs than the rest of their body. So while the body color is very similar to the red roan, it's actually a bay roan because of that black mane and tail. All right, we're going to move on over to the left to this gorgeous, Arabian here. And this is what we would call a flea-bitten gray. And it literally looks like a horse with freckles all over it, brown freckles. They're typically brown. I saw one time that was kind of darker, almost black color freckles. Very pretty horse. All right, so that's a flea bitten. Then we move down in this other gray here is what we would call a dapple gray. And it just looks like somebody took I'll use a Q-tip because they make nice round circles, and they just dabbed white all over this gray base and mixed it all together, and you get this really neat pattern. Moving over back to the right, back in line with what we were originally planning, is that very classic buckskin. Cream colored, black mane and tail, black legs. He's got some almost stockings on the hind legs and socks on the front. One of the most popular colors in terms of horses. Now, that's another point that could be argued because then next, moving over to the right, we have that very classic gold bar Palomino. And that gold color, especially in the summertime, comes out and they look like gold bars. Now, there's a range. They can be more yellow or they can be that real dark, rich gold. The key is that they have a white mane and tail is what gives them that very classic Palomino look. All right, we're going to move down and across here to the paint that's running. So all these horses on the bottom with the exception of our solid white horse here, we'll get to that one towards the end here in just a minute, are all either paints or an Appaloosa, which is our fun spot here. But we'll get to him in just a second. So the horse that's running here is a combination of an Overo and a Tobiano, and it's called a Tovero, and it's a combination of those two characteristics of the Tobiano and the Overo. Now, let me explain the characteristics of a Tobiano and an Overo paint. So, we're going to move over here to our Tobiano. Typically has white on his legs and solid color on his face. So, you can see this cute foal, this cute little Tobiano foal here has white legs. That spot looks like it's wrapping up and over its back, but it actually has white connecting all the way across his back and up into his neck, but his face has color with a star. So that's a very classic Tobiano. Now we're going to move over to the Overo, over here in the right-hand corner. An Overo typically is the opposite of a Tobiano. It has white on its belly and on its face and color on its legs and back. So they're almost opposites. Could be argued. As we said, there's exceptions to every rule. So Tovero, it has white on its face. It's just kind of a mishmash. There's no real pattern or design to it, or when you line them up. All right. Now we have our fun little spot horse. Most likely any horse that you're going to see spots on, could be wrong, is going to be some lineage of the Appaloosa and that really pretty colors that spray throughout. But this is what we would call a spotted Appaloosa. Now we're going to come back over, and just above our Tobiano mare and foal here is what we call a cremello. Now a cremello has no color. There's no pigment in its skin whatsoever. It's not really a white. Their eyes are pink, their noses are pink, the insides of their ears are pink. They are not very healthy horses. They sunburn really easy. They get skin cancer really easy. I'm sure there's some out there that do well. They take a little bit more care. So we do our best when we're breeding and doing genetics on horses to avoid crosses that could possibly throw a cremello. Alrighty, let's move on to all these markings. So some of these horses here, I like this, our little Tobiano foal down here. He has a nice little star, and then our Overos over here to actually have what they would call a bald face, is what they would be called, or a wide blaze. But for the most part, when it comes to an Overo, it's just white on the face. That's just an example of what a wide or a bald face could be. And then our Palomino here has a star, a strip, and a snip that comes down on his nose. And we'll draw some of these here in just a second. So here's some of the names. I didn't list them all because there's any combination. So on the face markings, we have a star, a snip, and a strip. We also have a general name for a blaze, which essentially just runs the whole length of the face. And then we have, you can also have faint stars, big stars, small stars, uncentered strips, snips, the whole 9 yards. Now, moving on to the legs, same thing. We have what we call a cornet band, a half pastern, or a pastern. We have socks, stockings, and spots. So so you should see these if you're working on your Introduction to Horsemanship book for the Montana 4-H Horse Program. These are the diagrams that are in your book. So we're going to move over to where my computer will allow me to draw. Just a second here. Okay, we'll start with our faces. So there's a wide range. And the other thing is, there's a lot of patterns out there that I might not know about. A great place to go and just look up patterns on the internet sometimes. Just Google horse markings and patterns and do a little bit of your own research and create your own face markings in your book that go along with maybe one that you like. So we're gonna do the basic ones here on these guys. My fun diagrams here. So we're gonna start with a star. A star is typically either between the eyes or above. It's not down on the bridge of the nose. So this little mark here, this was what we would call a faint star, okay? Now, you can have a really big star. We're gonna have some fun here with our movement. Okay, really big star or a really small star like I showed right here, okay? So let's move on to what a strip looks like. Now a strip can start just above the eyes or right between and run all the way down to just above the nose, okay? And they can be all different shapes, so I'll do some fun movement here with my lines. Oh, it's not wanting to work. There we go. All right, so there's a strip, all right? Now, let's look at what a snip. So a snip is typically down on the nose from just above the nose, the nostrils, down between the nose, around the nostril, even possibly down onto the lip. So we're gonna do an uncentered snip. So it's literally what it sounds like. It's uncentered. So we're going to go over the nose and down over the lip. So a centered one would be right down the middle. You can also do a large snip, which would encompass a good portion of the nose and possibly even wrap down on to the lips. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at a blaze or an interrupted blaze. So we'll do an interrupted blaze first. So we'll start with a blaze. We'll back up here. So a blaze is typically a wide patch of white that goes from the forehead down the bridge of the nose and into the nostril. Run even almost a snip. Now this isn't gonna do what I want it to, of course. And we'll try it on this one, see if this works. So wide blaze, we'll have some fun here. So why not? Wide blaze, down into the nose. Of course, it's gonna be difficult because why not? We'll do it in sections here. It'll behave itself, hopefully. All right, so then we'll finish it off here. There we go. So there's what would be a wide blaze. That's a very non-traditional wide blaze, but it works. So now an interrupted blaze would mean that, I'll just move these around a little bit, and we'll accomplish our purpose, would be a wide patch that runs down, and then there's a break somewhere in the middle here that is causing color to come across here in the middle somewhere. Now some could call this a star, a strip, and a snip, but for our intents and purposes, we'll call it a blaze. Okay? Now you can have a thick blaze, you can have a narrow blaze. It just depends on the size of the mark on their forehead. So I'll show you some other fun markings that you might enjoy. So there's a marking and it's called a badger face. And so a badger face is kind of fun. Give me a second here and I'll do my best to draw one. So essentially a badger face is, we'll do a circle here. Now up until this point, everything inside the markings has been white, okay? So, but with a badger face, let's see if I can get this to work. Need a better setup for drawing. Yeah, we'll just leave it. Okay. So, a badger face, this all has color, okay? And then there's just a thin outside strip of white. Okay? So all of this in here is white, but there's color here and there's color everywhere else. Okay? And you can have a reverse badgerface, you can have a thin, a thick. Just like all the others, there's lots of different descriptions for a badger face. All right. Some of the other ones you might see, people might even get more specific by saying a star with a blaze and a strip over the nostrils and lip. So essentially, let's just draw that one really quickly. So a star, blaze, and snip over the nostril to lip. Okay, so that would be essentially, we would have like a faint, we'll just call it a faint star that comes down, and there's a wide, or we'll do a narrow. Actually, we'll just go with a narrow because narrow is fun. We have all kinds of fun when your computer decides to work with you. Okay. So we have our blaze, okay, that's gonna turn into a snip. So I'm gonna actually stretch this out a little bit. Snip, so it's down on the nose, over the nostrils. So that would include, we're gonna take this white and go over the nostrils. So white is coming in, so you'll often see white inside their nose, okay? Down onto their lip. All right, so that would be an example of a star blaze snip over the nose and lip, okay? All right, so I think we've had enough fun with our facial markings. Let's move over to our legs. Oop. I was practicing earlier with my computer. I'll get rid of that one. So, got our legs. This diagram we have two hind legs and 3 front legs. But we're just gonna go through and try and draw the most common markings on their legs. So we'll start out with what some would call a coronet. Now this is where the anatomy and physiology of your horse really comes in handy, just like on the head. A coronet marking is simply just like white that comes right along the coronet. Now they can be thicker, but if it gets too thick, then it's no longer a coronet. It turns into a sock or a half sock. So for the most part, it's a real thin strip of white that runs right along the top of the hoof, okay? So let's do a sock on this one. So a sock would come up, and we'll just start here and have some fun with it. All right, there's a sock. Comes up, the pastern, the fetlocks white as well, all right? All right, now we have a stocking. So a stocking comes up further on the leg, like big, tall basketball socks, okay, or volleyball socks. They come up, can come all the way up to the knee, but sometimes below the knee for the most part. And you can have socks that come about halfway up the cannon bone too. You can also have, I'll make this one a half stocking. And this is also, it's kind of a little bit of an art form in terms of looking at these, because you gotta look at them and be very detailed about what you're looking at. So by putting this line right here, if it'll decide to work with me, which would be fantastic, there we go. Essentially, this makes it like a half stocking because it doesn't go all the way around the leg. It only goes partway around the leg. All right, so let's take a look at what a fetlock would look like. So here's our fetlock. So that would be like white that comes just in here on the fetlock. Can look like a sock, could be debatable. But for the most part, it comes up and there's white on the fetlock. So some could argue that this could even be a fetlock. Okay. Alrighty, I feel like I'm forgetting one here. Let me go back to my chart. So we went over a cornet band. We did a half stocky instead of a half pastor, and we did a sock, not a stock, a sock. Oh, a spot. Let's take a look at what a spot could possibly look like. So I haven't seen this marking on horses, but then again, I've only been around a few. A spot is typically literally just little spots on their legs, okay? No particular location, just spots. All right, well, I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. I'll do my best to answer them, and we'll talk to you soon.